Hi, Simi. How are you?
Hi, Puneet. Good, good. I'm so excited.
Me too.
This is the first time we're coming together to talk about everything that has unfolded in our lives.
First time on, I guess, suppose recording it, but we have certainly come together and talked a lot about, uh, you know, the things that we are going to talk about.
Yeah, and today one of my friends was telling me, what are your plans for the day? And I said, well, I'm going to have a session with my mentor slash friend who I have never met in person. So I do consider you my mentor, and and this is why I'm honestly so excited to have this conversation with you.
Likewise, yeah. I was
Yeah,
talking to my wife this morning, and I was just telling her, I've never met Simi in person, but it just feels like I've just known her forever. And despite, we've just had a relationship over, email and phone and,
yes,
video as well. And yeah, this feels very special that we are able to, talk about things and share it with people.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start picking your brain. We're going to talk about the spiritual path. So it doesn't matter which religion you come from. I feel like a lot of people, regardless of the religious background, they talk about this term spiritual path. What is that in your journey?
Yeah, I think, the spiritual path, at least for me, indicated a search in some way. Like there is this innate seeking of something like that. For me it started out with being unsatisfied, or there was a sense of dissatisfaction with with the way my life was going, or with, despite having maybe the material aspects of life checked, but there was still something missing. And I think as human beings we are always wanting more. There's this feeling of it's never enough, and there's always new experiences, new countries that we want to travel to, and there's this eternal search for something that will give it to me. At least that was my experience of, especially in my when I was younger, where I just wanted to travel more. I wanted all these different experiences. I wanted to, go to these music festivals and dance festivals, and uh, yeah, and it just felt like it was never enough. And and at some point, maybe the spirit, so I suppose we are always on a path which is like I want to find something, but at some point for me that shifted from trying to find things to taking responsibility for the dissatisfaction. I think in the beginning I was feeling that if I can find something outside and make my life better, and so that was sort of my assumption, that I would find something in the external which will really make my life amazing and I will be satisfied. And at some point that shifted to, okay, I don't think the world really can give it to me. And it started to move into, okay, what is my responsibility here? Like how much of the dissatisfaction is because of the way I'm relating to the world? And I think that started the spiritual path for me. So it's like, okay, it's not the world, there's something in me that is, I didn't know how to maybe explain it at the time, but now of course I can understand like what was the causes of suffering. But eventually it was like, what is the cause of suffering? And not so much of like what can give me a better high. Certainly that was what I was seeking as well in the spiritual path. But from my perspective that I can speak today is, eventually it started looking into the causes of suffering, and how my life is moment to moment, and in those moments how am I relating to that moment, and is something flawed in the relationship, it's with how I'm relating. So yeah, that was how I would define it. And everybody is on a spiritual path, knowingly or unknowingly. For a long time I was unconscious about the fact that I was on a spiritual path, which is I am seeking fulfillment in some way. And everybody that I talk to is seeking fulfillment, be it with their
Mm.
relationships, be it with their jobs, be it with self-actualization. There's always this seeking of like, okay, if I can do these things, I will be satisfied. And yeah, and so at some point, I think when we become conscious of the fact that, okay, it is in here that the fulfillment lies, and I think that really maybe conscious spiritual path begins.
Mm. That's interesting you said that we're always on the spiritual path. The way when we decided to do this topic, the way I was looking at the spiritual path was everything you just shared, for sure. But also that what we do unconsciously, for some reason, I took it as it's not spiritual path. And what we
Hmm.
do consciously is the spiritual path. But now I see where you're coming from. Everything we do in this life is to seek fulfillment.
Hmm.
And it's to really align with the spirit. And we just go about it in the way we know at the time, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, so, so as soon as you're born and you start to conceptualize things in life, you're embarking on that path to
Hmm.
return to alignment with the spirit. I really like
Right.
that.
And I think like society has such a I love the fact that you brought up like like the conditioning, right, which is like the culture that we have brought up in influences the things that we do seek out. And I was, for example, I grew up in India, and I was in a middle class family, and so a lot of my conditioning was getting a stable job and like finding escaping poverty. And so my conditioning was, if I were to escape poverty and have a high well-paying job, and better material life than what my parents and my ancestors did, that would be fulfillment, right? So a lot of what I seeked out was that, which included you know getting educated, and in a way where I could find a high paying job, being able to have enough resources to be able to travel and have these different experiences. And so that was my conditioning. But I suppose if you were born in a different culture, maybe in a wealthier family, then you would probably have different sets of things that you might want to seek out for fulfillment.
Mm.
And so yeah, so we are always doing things from our past experiences, and yeah, and so it is important to maybe explore for ourselves to see, okay, what do I have my own understanding of what can really give me satisfaction and what cannot. And yeah, I just wanted to say that as well.
Yeah. I liked how you touched upon the restlessness of this human experience.
Hmm.
I've noticed that within myself. And the only time that sense of restlessness sort of dissolves or seems to ease a little bit are moments like when I am looking at the sunrise, or when a
Hmm.
baby hugs me, or when I am eating a delicious, you know, slice of mango, right? Like, and you've
Yes.
shared this before. It seems to like just stop for a moment,
Yeah.
and then the restlessness returns.
Yeah.
And that subtle restlessness is like always, or it must have been always present in my life, but I personally did not awaken to that until I uh, went through my divorce and then I experienced the deep suffering, right?
Hmm.
Really, it's the restlessness when not paid attention to and not leaning into it to embark on that conscious path, I feel like is when like the suffering intensifies the less we pay attention to that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say that. Yeah, I love that you spoke about how the restlessness, we want to get away from the restlessness, and all of our desires that we fulfill is based on the assumption that if I fulfill them, then my restlessness would end. Which is probably true, which is, when we do fulfill desires, we do for some time feel very satisfied, right? Like if I do want to watch a sunset and I seek it out, and when I do experience it, it does feel great. And so for the moment, while we are enjoying what our desire wanted us to enjoy, we do feel amazing. And that restlessness subsides for a moment, but then it comes back. And then we kind of repeat the cycle, right? And so at some point, there is a realization that, okay, I can keep going on this journey where I experience highs when desires are satisfied, and then I'm back to this sort of baseline restlessness, and so at some point the mind turns towards, okay, what might be the cause of the restlessness in the first
Mm,
place, and that is also part of the unfolding process, but that might happen much later because we are so hardwired into wanting to fulfill desires. I think we are just born with that conditioning. We can say it happens over lifetimes, but even if we just look at this particular life, like from the moment we're born to this moment, we have always, we are babies in some way. If you look at a baby, when they're unhappy because they're hungry, they're going to cry and feel like they need whatever the food or the milk, or right, and then they do get it, and then they feel good. So they're constantly being programmed into, oh, if you're unhappy, you need to shout and let people know. And as adults, we kind of do that too in some ways, maybe in a more sophisticated way than a baby does.
yeah,
um,
absolutely. When I was growing up, I there was this high school I really wanted to get into. It's
hmm,
called Girls High School, and I had just come moved to the U.S. from India, um, like maybe a year and a half before that. And so, like, getting into that high school was just such a big deal. And I got in. You feel ecstatic when you get what you want. And then I wanted to get into this college that I really wanted to go to, and I got in, and I
hmm,
was extremely ecstatic, happy about that. Um, Interesting thing is, when things like go your way, you just think that's how life is going to play out,
hmm,
and then I get married to a physician. Everyone is extremely happy, especially coming from an Indian culture. It's like a
right,
great checkbox, right?
right.
Marrying.
You married a doctor, yeah.
Yeah, right. I have, two wonderful children. We have this nice house. We have all the things that we need, or that is the mark of success. But even going through all of that, there were moments where I was just like, something doesn't sit well. And I just never really noticed that part of me.
Hmm,
And then, I go through that divorce is, and then, financially, I struggled for a little while, because obviously with divorce, it does hit you financially.
hmm,
I struggled getting back into my career, trying to make a living for myself, the boys. All of those struggles, I can look at it now and say it was a blessing, but at the time, it doesn't feel that way, right?
hmm,
And now that I have gone through so many ups and downs through all of those experiences, I can honestly say now that money doesn't bring happiness because I did have it.
hmm,
Um, Things don't bring happiness. I had it. Getting into the perfect school, yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't bring happiness. It brings a certain amount of pleasure, but it's fleeting. It doesn't
hmm,
stay with
yeah.
us. So like all those times, I did have moments of happiness or pleasure, but it always kept going away. And then it's like the next thing, and then you go through a divorce, everyone's telling you, "Oh, now you need to find someone to get married to. Life will be different. Life will be better." And I had to stop in my tracks and say, okay, this is some wake up call. I don't know what it is, but it's a wake up call. And I
Hmm.
think that was the best decision I made. It must have been my spirit guiding me, saying,
Hmm.
okay, this isn't the path that you're on right now is not going to give you the fulfillment that you're seeking.
Hmm.
So, so that was, I think, now looking back, I can say that challenges can be an awakening experience.
Right. And I suppose the question I have is, a lot of people, as being born as human beings, it's full of challenges, right? But very few people actually turn to what we call the spiritual path, right? A lot of people might turn to, you know, substances, or might not even consider the possibility of seeking out of it, right? Like people continue to be in a situation where they might struggle and suffer, and maybe in a toxic relationship, or however, whatever the situation is for them. So how did you experience that, and like how did you sort of make the decision that, oh wow, I actually am moving towards the spiritual path? Like how did that open up for you?
I didn't even know I was moving towards a spiritual path. I don't even think I ever thought of that term spiritual path. I
Right.
grew up Christian in a Syrian Orthodox family. And what we did was we just went to church on Sundays, and we were taught to believe in Jesus, and you pray and then all will be well.
Hmm.
That was my understanding of, if you want to call that spiritual path. But I think that was just a tradition that I sort of accepted and followed. When I went through the suffering phase of my life, I should say deep suffering phase of my life, I started questioning everything.
Hmm.
I would say I became an atheist. And I started wondering, okay, why is there so much suffering? And I think a lot of people stay an atheist because they can't resolve that answer.
Right.
Is, well, if there is a God, especially from a Christian perspective, if
Mm-hmm.
there is a God, why is he letting these things happen? And Christianity has its own responses for that, and I'm not
Hmm.
saying it's right or wrong, because the more you dive into Christianity, it all sort of has the same layers of many other traditions. But I think we as Christians tend to stay in that baby Christianity phase, as Father Richard Rohr, one of my favorite priests,
Hmm.
say. And me personally, I was stuck in that baby Christianity phase.
Hmm.
So becoming an atheist also didn't sit well with me uh, over time,
Hmm.
because I couldn't accept the fact that everything is random when there's so much interconnectedness in this world.
Hmm.
You know, how is everything formulated so intelligently, so perfectly, that just to say it's just random, it just didn't sit well with me.
Hmm.
Um, so I think becoming an atheist at the time, and then still feeling that restlessness, got me into the Buddhist center. And that's
Hmm.
where I got introduced to meditation. And the beautiful thing about meditation, or that center that I went to, was the monk telling me, stop thinking, stop analyzing, just sit.
Hmm.
And that is probably where I started to want to understand the power of the mind, which I never even considered or thought about. The power of conditioning, all our upbringing, all the narratives about people and places and outcomes. And once I started that Buddhist path or Buddhist teachings, everything started to shift. Everything started to shift. And I won't say I've come to a place where I'm like, I have all the answers. I don't. I'm not supposed to.
Right.
And
And
I
that's
don't think
okay.
any of us have as humans, right? Yeah.
Right.
We're all very, clueless in many ways, navigating this miraculous existence,
Right.
right? So that's how I would say at some point, meditation is what consciously got me to think about the spiritual path.
Yeah. I like
How
what you
about
said, like
you?
in the, the questioning aspect. I think that needs to be the basis of, or not the basis, but the start, where you start to
Mm,
question things. And, the questioning itself will lead you in different directions, and in the direction that I think you might find more connection. So, like, it sounds like you found more connection in the meditation space, but there's so many
mm,
different ways in which you can start to move in the direction of taking responsibility and getting more clarity about the experience that we are all having. Uh,
mm.
but I think the root of it is this feeling of, I'm going to question what I am, what my beliefs are, and are those beliefs true or not, and that every person, I think, has to consider that their beliefs may be wrong and they need to be questioned.
I love that. I love that so much. And that's probably the scariest thing from all of us.
Yeah.
When we're breaking through, I know that was the scariest thing for me because it's so nice to be in that box,
Right.
where everything makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But it's how do you, but when you don't break out of that box, or when you realize like the lid is actually open, you just need to come out, you also miss out on an amazing way of living this life. That's been my personal experience. To really be at ease with life. It doesn't mean like there are no struggles. Like there's so many weird things that come up in my mind that I'm just like, why am I even thinking that? But
Yeah.
the interesting thing is, it doesn't have the same importance
Mm.
it once did. And
Yeah.
that's why I loved meditation personally, is because most of our struggles is the thinking mind. It's just constantly trying to analyze everything in this world, trying to analyze how to make ourselves happy. While it can be good, it can also be this constant search that just, you know and some of it, and I think you shared that, like sometimes you can get into that spiritual, the perception of a spiritual ladder, right? We keep thinking, if I go to this thing, or the like this type of meditation, or maybe this
Yeah.
type of guru. um yeah, please share
I
your
was I
thoughts.
was just gonna say that, in the beginning, I think the spiritual path for me was also about accumulation, right? Which was accumulating spiritual insights or spiritual experiences, and wanting to feel better, right? I think, this, like you mentioned, there's this fundamental restlessness, and in the past, my soothing of the restlessness used to be through external things, like, eating well, or like going out in, hanging out with like friends, or like doing things that would take me away from the restlessness and distract me in some ways, maybe watching movies. But once we are on the spiritual path, in the beginning, a lot of it is soothing the restlessness through spiritual experiences of, like, maybe quietening the mind, getting into a state of, it's a lot of beauty, there's a lot of joy, and there's a lot of depth and richness in those mind states.
Yeah.
But at the same time, coming out of those experiences will bring me back to the restlessness, right? So there is this similar root and the flavor of wanting to escape the restlessness in the spiritual path as well, that comes about. And for me, it was a really long time. I took a long time to realize that, oh wow, I'm actually using the spiritual path in the exact same way that I was using, my young, how I was operating when I was younger.
Yeah.
And it's just that the object has changed. Now I'm using some spiritual sense experience as a means of escaping. Um, and I think all of this is grace, right? Like at some point, and a realization happens, which is like, okay, maybe this is also not going to give it to me. So, like you mentioned, like examining my belief here, like I believed that if I keep having spiritual experiences, my life would be, the restlessness would end. And
Mm,
some insight said, oh, maybe that's not true. Like that's a belief. Maybe that's not true. So challenging
mm,
even spiritual beliefs, uh, and the same mind that caused us to even shift into the spiritual path. I think the same mind is needed to even challenge all of the spiritual beliefs that one might encounter and kind of take on in the course of in the journey.
would
Um,
you say that, sorry, I do want to touch upon what you just shared. So, would you say that that spiritual accumulation is sort of a necessary thing as a beginner?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Certainly, it was for me because I was an accumulator. In I think growing up in modern society, we have been told that we need to accumulate, right? We need to
Mm,
save money. We need to gather knowledge, and so there is this conditioning of, oh, I need to store things in my brain, and so there's this feeling that if I get enough, then I will be happy. And so the same roots uh, operate even in the spiritual path, and at least that's certainly been my case.
mhm,
And whether it's necessary, I think probably, because I think every person has to have their own learning and their own insight of understanding that this is how their brain operates, or this is how the mind is uh, trying to gain something.
mm,
Um, and so I think the spiritual path is about shining light into the inner workings of the mind. It's this process of self learning. It's this process of understanding all of our habit patterns, all of our desires, all of our beliefs, and challenging everything. Because I think at the
mm.
end, everything has to go. Every accumulation and every belief has to go, because those beliefs most likely are not true.
Yeah, I asked that question because the path was definitely not linear for me. It
Hmm.
wasn't like, I walked into a meditation center, I started learning Buddhist teachings, and then I decided to just sit with the Buddhist teachings only. There were
Hmm.
so many twists and turns in my journey. I
Yeah.
would go to meetup groups, and the meetup group would talk about all different teachings. They would talk about Taoism, they would talk about yoga, they would talk about, Eckhart Tolle's teachings. They would talk
Hmm.
about, uh, so many like Stoic philosophy, so many different things, and even using psychedelics, how that
Mm-hmm.
can, awaken
Right.
that sense of oneness. So not that I did it, I was exposed to learning about it, and so I was just so I had a period of confusion
Hmm.
as to, well, okay, all of this is great, but now what? It's
Yeah.
almost like you've been given like so many tools, but you don't know what the tool is for. Each tool is for. So I
Yeah.
went through that phase.
Hmm.
Um, and I really want to do, I know this is like off topic, but I really do want to do another episode with you just on yoga,
Hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
that looks like in the United States.
Hmm.
Um, because even on the yogic journey, when I got into yoga, I went for my YTT yoga teacher training. And then eventually I am hearing about shamanic healing. I am hearing about new moon meditation, full moon meditation, sound bath meditation,
Hmm.
and so many different modalities that I didn't understand, you know, which is the right thing for me to do. There was just so much confusion at the time, right? Should
Mm-hmm.
I go down the shamanic healing path? Because is that also yoga? Like coming from a completely non yoga background, I knew nothing about yoga other than the asanas that I saw,
Mm.
or the rishis sitting with long hair in the Himalayas. Those are the two images that
Right.
that I knew about yoga.
Yeah.
So when you're in the West, you go to a yoga studio, there's so many different modalities being presented, but it's called a yoga studio. You just assume that everything being presented is the path of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very confusing time for me, but all of that confusion was good looking back. Just as you said, maybe it was spiritual accumulation,
Mm-hmm.
and to just realize that, to realize, to want, it made me want to dig deeper
Right.
and get clarity. And then the more things became clear, I realized which way I wanted to go, and
Yeah.
which way aligned with me personally. Have
Yeah.
you, yeah,
Yeah,
have you come
absolutely. I mean, I certainly went through what is known as the the window shopping phase of the spiritual path, right? Like you're
you
trying to
did,
understand,
yeah.
like it's a completely new world, and you're trying to make sense of things, and you're trying to also find out what you really connect with. Like I certainly am different than my friends who are in, and so every person has to figure out that what is something that they relate to, and each
Mm.
path or each tradition or each type of meditation or yoga practice, they all offer something, and depending on where we are and what we're struggling with, I think each thing has a particular use. So be it shamanic traditions or even Sufi traditions or there's different yoga traditions as well. So each of them has a certain quality of the practice, and it's solving for a particular problem, and so that's where the connection comes in, and it's very individual, it's very personal. Like you can't say one is better than the other. That's a very, I would say, narrow minded way of looking at things. But I think the way to judge something is that if you are feeling more open and more free, then that is something that's working for you.
Mm.
And at some point, the tool has to be given up as well, because the tool itself becomes a, a barrier and like a weight. And at some point, that has to be dropped, which means that you are progressing, which means you're no longer relying on something external, and you're building your own sense of perception and stability. And so, yeah, the window shopping phase has to happen to find out the right teacher, because I think that's also important. Like I've certainly struggled um, with finding a person that I could connect with. I started on my journey, I would say, back in like 2014, 2015. And I only met my teacher in 2017 who I really connected with. So for 2.5 years, I would say I really kind of was throwing darts in different directions, hoping to find somebody. And I think that was necessary. For I found
Mm.
teachers who I didn't connect with, so I needed to kind of go through that to understand. Okay, this person who I finally found, like my teacher, like I really connected with him, right? So there was this. It's like dating in some ways. Like you have to go
Mm.
and find out the person who you really connect with. So um,
What is it about the teacher that you connected with? What
yeah,
was different about the teacher?
yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. I think when I first met my teacher, I was very skeptical because I had the experience of uh, immediately relying on credentials in some ways, of like, this person is a famous teacher and
Mm.
teaches, has a group of like 150 people who show up. So there's this feeling that, oh, wow, this person must be good because there are other people who are validating the fact that he's probably has something. But at the end of the day, I feel like I need to be able to approach this person, and this person is meeting me where I am and is able to connect with what I'm going through and really offer something that helps me. That's how I looked at what I wanted, which is I had all these burning questions, and I needed somebody to soothe them in some way. Like, because it was this sort of struggle of like, oh my God, like what I'm trying to make sense of all of the stuff that is going on and all of the things that I'm reading, and there's contradictory things that are happening, and it just doesn't make sense. And I needed somebody to say, stop, this, focus on this thing, or, share from their direct experience that this is what needs to be done. And
Mm.
so there was that piece, which is my intellectual longing was needed satisfaction. And then there was the other piece, which is I actually saw this teacher as somebody who, was living a very ordinary life, you can say, had a lot of challenges, but was one of the most joyful people that I have ever met. And so just the shock of, oh wow, this person has incredible struggles in life, but does not show them at all. Like I had never met anybody like that before. Like the only baseline experience was, okay, life is good because this other teachers, for example, they were in like certain traditions, they were supported by huge groups of people, and they had this title in some ways of a teacher, and they were obviously sharing the wisdom of the tradition that they belonged in. But this man was not part of any tradition, a bigger organization, was living by himself, was physically challenged and handicapped, and had all of these struggles, right? Like didn't have the backing of like a large organization, and but yet was living in the world and was the most joyful person. So I think like that itself showed me that okay, this is a person who's living, an ordinary, normal human life, not a spiritual life, um, and is experiencing what the tradition is talking about. So there was that skepticism in the beginning, but then it finally dawned on me that this is actually real, and this person is living that reality. And then there's the other part of like this connection that you can have with the teacher, where when you actually talk to them and you're in their presence, it feels like watching a sunset, right? For a moment you're
Mm.
just feeling very connected and very at ease, and just the true nature of our minds is revealed. The true nature of who we are is revealed, where it's clear in their presence. So like that was like another, I would say, metric for me to say, okay, I actually feel very good when I'm in the presence of this person.
Mm.
um,
I asked that question because I wanted to sort of dive into the spiritual guru world
hmm,
that, when we embark on that spiritual path,
yeah.
we get confused with who to follow, and I really like what you were sharing about we have a tendency to trust someone who has massive following
Hmm,
than someone who has very less following,
mm-hmm,
because for some reason we believe that, well, if a million people are following this person must have the secret.
right.
And and I think this is no different from thinking, once when you are a entry level employee, that once you become a VP, somehow life is going to be so drastically different because you have so many layers underneath,
Hmm,
right? So it doesn't mean the VP has um, found the happiness necessarily because the VP makes more money in any way. It's just our perception of
right.
that ladder, right? When there's so
Yeah.
many people, like, it's almost like there's that herd mentality. If
Hmm,
everyone's following this teacher, he or she must be amazing.
right.
And I have been, I don't know what the right word is, but I have been victim to that. where I would follow, even though they live a completely, I would follow a teacher, even though they live a completely different life than I do.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that is becoming, on this path, that is becoming more important now. A lot of the people that I used to follow didn't necessarily live the life of a householder. They didn't necessarily have a husband. They didn't necessarily have children. They may be living in an ashram. It's a very different lifestyle they are leading.
Hmm.
And even though the teachings can be weaved into a householder's life, I also wanted to connect with someone who really lived it and
Hmm.
experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
And that became, and that's one thing that resonated for me about you is the fact that you, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I lost you for a second. Are we good?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, okay. So, one thing that resonated for me with you or about you is the fact that you are married and you do live a normal, I don't know if the word is normal, but you live a life that almost aligns with the way that I live my life. And and the other interesting piece I want to bring up is we all often think that a spiritual guru has to be older. I don't want
Hmm.
to use the word guru so much. A mentor or a guru has to
Hmm.
be older than you, and you are
Hmm.
definitely much younger than me.
Hmm.
And I personally don't think age means that you have evolved spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, because I have seen in my own experiences where I see some 25-year-old woman and I am thinking, I definitely did not think like that at that
Hmm.
age.
Right.
Right. So for me to even think that, she is where I am at this age, or vibrationally, we're like in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
So that also, like all these ideas I
Yeah.
had about what a guru is like has been, um, I don't know, has been somewhat of an illusory experience.
Yeah. I actually love what my own teacher says about the, what a guru is. So obviously it's a Sanskrit word, guru, and the
Mm.
literal meaning is it is a dispeller of darkness. And so a guru is a principle and not necessarily a person. So anything that gives more insight into the mind, which is shining light on a particular aspect of your conditioning or your mind, is a guru. And sometimes they show up as a human being. But, like you said, challenges in life are also guru because that's where our attachments or our struggles show up. So anything that mirrors something about us is guru.
Wow, I did not know. I always, as attached a person to
Hmm.
that word. I knew the definition, but I never looked at it that way. But that makes so
Yeah.
much sense.
And the second part is, if they do show up as a physical person, which is a human being, then that is a temporary psychological device. Like they are not to be like looked at as a permanent dependent thing. Like a guru is always temporary. The use of the guru is also temporary. Like just
Mm.
like every tool has a purpose, a guru is a tool. Not to say, not to undermine that their humanity. Of course, they're a human being, and so after, like, they have helped you, you would still have reverence and respect for them, just like any other friend that you have, in life. But I think what the modern misconception and the fear is that the gurus become somehow controllers of your life, and like they have this sort of holiness that they are somehow different than you. But at the end
Mm.
of the day, they are you, and that's what the guru makes you see, that you are exactly the same as who they are. Um, and so, the other metric that my teacher said, well, while trying to maybe evaluate a teacher or a guru, is there's three dimensions. If they are trying to take a lot of money from you, or if they're trying to control your life, or if they're trying to have sex with you, run in the opposite direction.
Mm.
Because those are the three ways in which we generally tend to be manipulated. And so, if there is a small indication that that's kind of happening, you know that there's something wrong. That there's the red flag that needs to be raised in your mind, and really question whether this is the right person for you.
That's a good question. Well, that's a very interesting idea, especially about the money part. A lot of gurus make a living with the money that they receive
Yeah.
when they share their teachings. So, is it wrong?
Yeah. And when I say money, I don't necessarily mean, that they don't have a right to make a living. That's totally fine. But there's some gurus who say you must, donate like in an insane amount of money to me. And like, to have a 5-minute one-on-one meeting, you have to like go through hoops and like do all these crazy, you know, things that these organizations do. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
encountered these organizations, but there are a lot of organizations where you have to like pay a lot of money to be able to get into the inner circle, and so I would say those things become more political, and that's not the purpose of the spiritual path, right? And maybe
Mm.
for that person, they're trying to become integrated into that that group and that organization, and but then that's not solving for what the spiritual path is, which is how do I
Mm.
free myself of suffering. So you need
It's
to be very clear about what you want.
mm, it's that instant fix scenario, right? We just assume that, hey, if I pay like $12,000, maybe all my
Oh
questions
yeah.
and problems will be solved.
Right. If
Like
only it
there's
worked that
some
way,
answer there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess maybe we didn't touch upon all of the spiritual traditions have all these tools. We were talking about that earlier, which is like there's so much diversity and there's so many paths and so many different techniques. But the fundamental thing that each of those techniques are trying to solve is, there's different terms to describe that. Some traditions call it samskara, some traditions call it vasana, but these are essentially impressions that we have gathered in life, which could show up as beliefs, which could show up as attachments. And all of those have to be seen through and really challenged. And these different techniques are just ways of shining light into each of those beliefs. And until those are really let go or dissolved in some ways, I think the we will keep having the same patterns of wanting to experience some sort of like pleasant experience and then feel good about it for some time, but then we are back to the baseline restlessness. So the restlessness that we experience when we are in our normal human experience, the cause of that is these beliefs. And so all of spiritual practices is hopefully shining light on those beliefs.
Yeah. And where would you say you are on the spiritual path? Or
Me
is there
personally,
a place?
I mean,
Is there such a
yeah.
thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think that's I think I'm finally.
I'm asking you questions, by the way, that I would ask myself. Like, where are you, Sudhi?
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I think at some point I've stopped asking myself questions like that. Like where am I on the path? Like, is there an end? I think for me, what I most ask myself is like, what is wrong with this current moment? Is there anything wrong with this current moment? And if there is, then look into that, because there's some sort of an underlying belief here that's in operation that I'm unconscious of. Um,
I love
and
that. Oh no, please go ahead. I was just
no,
saying
that
I.
was it. Yeah. So I think it's mostly about being right here, right now, and saying,
Mm,
okay, this is all this. In fact, I think the end of my not end. I would say at this point, I have come to an this understanding that this experience or this world is all we get. Like what is the only thing that is true, which is, right now I'm talking to you, and so this is all I get right now in this moment. But our habitual or my habitual tendency in the past was wanting more than this moment, and
Hmm.
trying to escape this moment. And the same view or the same conditioning or the same belief that there's something better available and hence I need to seek it is the cause of suffering. And so my, you could say, practice in some ways now is just to like see that, oh, I'm trying to escape this moment by either
Hmm.
thinking about a new dream or a new possibility, and seeing that, oh wow, this is the pattern that I have been living for my whole life, and bringing it back to now and saying, okay, this moment is actually really good, there's nothing wrong with it.
Hmm.
um, and
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a beautiful explanation of the path, because we always are seeking to get somewhere because we're trained that way from childhood to, to keep graduating every grade, to go to school, to get a diploma, to get a job, have, get married, have children.
hmm,
So I can see how we can get caught up in that. One thing I love reflecting on is also progression.
hmm,
I reflect on, okay, has this path or has this teaching evolved the quality of my relationship, whether it's with my
hmm,
husband, whether it's with my children, the way I show up in the workplace. And if it's evolving, I know that I am heading in the right direction.
right.
And that's what I kind of lean into, like as an anchor, I would say.
Hmm,
When I feel the disturbance, I usually know, okay, I am attaching to something here.
hmm,
And interestingly, and this is why I trust the path. I think at some point you start to trust. Initially, you may question so many things, but I
hmm,
think you come to a point where you do start to trust the practices,
hmm,
because you start to notice a difference in the quality of your experience.
right.
And this is why for me, it's a lifelong path,
Hmm,
because I do want to live my life at ease. And when, as you said, when you meet others who are going through so many challenges that you're not even experiencing a quarter of that, and then you still see the joy in their hearts
hmm,
without having anything externally validating them, that's an inspiration for me.
absolutely.
You
Yeah,
know?
I love that. I love what you said about relationships. I think that is so. At least for me, I missed that part of the path, which was, in the end of the day, the way we relate to things with people, to our jobs, to finances. That is where the meat and the juice, or the things that cause conflict is, right? And like that's where our practice really shows us, whether we're progressing or not. And so I love that, a good metric is to see, oh, is the relationship with your partner how is it?
Mm.
Like, is it a healthy, am I showing up in a healthy way? Am I still getting triggered by things that they say, like, and if I am, why? Right. um yeah, I love that.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited to do more of these episodes, Puneet. I just love talking to you. And
Likewise,
and
likewise.
it's such a my heart's so full when we have these conversations, whether it's on camera or off camera. And like I said, I hope we continue to do this, because it is such an honor. It's so
Oh,
beautiful to be sharing this
yeah,
space
I
with
hope so too.
you.
Yeah, we're almost up at the hour. This was like such
Yeah,
like a lovely conversation.
it
And
really
yeah,
was.
I'd love to do more topics, and yeah, I'd love to hear more about, your own path and how you where you're at. I know we're, at the end of the hour, so maybe that could be the topic of our next episode, to talk about, how did you navigate all of the different things that you were talking about, going spiritually shopping.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I
Even
think,
what I'm experiencing, going through
like right now,
things that's
yeah,
coming up now.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And how your life has changed, I think that's a big, I love hearing about, a lot of these books, spiritual books that exist out there, like people talk about the journeys. It's always inspiring to read them. But I think what's even more inspiring is to hear about somebody who's alive right now, right? And actually see, oh wow, this journey actually changed different facets of our human experience, and made some really profound changes. So those are really inspiring moments where I can connect with another person to say, oh wow, I'm experiencing the exact same challenge in my life, and like this
Mm,
practice really helped with, like, helping deal with that. um, so I love that. Yeah, let's do more
yeah,
episodes.
absolutely. Do you want to end with maybe a meditation
Oh
if you're
wow.
open to leading
Sure.
it? Okay.
uh, okay, let's sit in a comfortable position. Maybe if you want to close your eyes, that might, of course, if you want to keep it open, that's fine too. Let's start by taking a few breaths. Maybe take a few longer breaths than you do. You can notice the inhale kind of gives you energy, and the exhale is sort of this removal process. You can think of removing maybe the tensions and the thoughts and stresses that you might be currently going through. So let's take a few more deep breaths here and just take in this energy from the air, this universe, and just feel it in your lungs when you breathe in. And on the way out, just exhale, removing all the stuff that you are dealing with. Maybe while you're doing this, just gently start to scan your body and just notice if there's any part of your body that's holding on to some tension. Maybe you can breathe into that part as well. And on the exhale, visualize that tension releasing. This simple process of breathing can have a profound effect of bringing us into this present moment, into our bodies, and just noticing that we are alive, conscious beings. Our minds are always in this thinking mode, maybe thinking and trying to solve problems. But this breathing just allows us to bring our attention into this body, which is always in this present moment. We can give our minds a little bit of rest. So keep breathing, putting our attention onto any part of the body that you feel needs some attention, and keep showering this loving presence to that part of the body. Okay. And as we exit this meditation, maybe take a few longer breaths again. Maybe sharing the benefit of this meditation with the people in your life, your friends, your family, people at work, and extending it to the people in your neighborhood, your city. Okay. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.